It's Monday, May 25th, 2020. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I'm aboard my Allied Princess 36 Sequester. We're right at the beginning of the season. We launched the boat last Wednesday, and just today finished doing everything that needed to be done to have the boat ready to take out sailing. So, probably in this coming week, we'll go out for the first sail of the season. And hopefully I'll shoot a video and bring you along with me. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about today was summer in Maine in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. And talk a little bit about what's going on here in Maine and what the implications of the Maine government's actions are for summer here this year. The boat here is in the Great Harbor Marina in Southwest Harbor, Maine, on Mount Desert Island, which is in Hancock County, Maine. As of yesterday, Maine had reported just over 2,000 cases of COVID-19. But more than 90% of those cases are in southern Maine. In fact, here in Hancock County, we have had 11 documented cases, and of those 11 cases, 9 people have recovered, 1 person unfortunately died, and as far as I know, 1 person still has COVID-19. So basically right now we have essentially 1 active case of COVID-19 out of a bit over 55,000 people. So it hasn't really impacted this area from the perspective of disease, unless you consider the 1 person who unfortunately died. Of course, there are probably other people who are not symptomatic who have it and are spreading it around a little bit, but the Maine Center for Disease Control has not yet documented any community spread here in Hancock County, Maine, or on Mount Desert Island. So what we're looking at right now is a COVID-19 epidemic which is concentrated in southern Maine, mostly around Portland, which is more than 2 hours drive from here. But the actions that the state of Maine has taken are going to impact this area for the summer. Of course, like most states, we have a stay-at-home order in place, and you can go out for recreational activities as long as you stay away from other people. So here I am today on Sequester. I've been working on the boat, which counts as recreation for me, and I did talk to the guy on the boat next to me, but it didn't really get very close to him because the 2 boats are about 7 feet apart and we weren't hanging over the edge. So that is fairly safe here. Obviously, the marina here in Southwest Harbor is open and working more or less normally, although they do have signs requesting you to keep a separation of at least a fathom from other people. And if you can't avoid that, too, please wear a mask. Now, but that's not the only thing that's going on. Restaurants in this area have been permitted to open for dine-in service since last Monday. However, in this area, Southwest Harbor and Bass Harbor, I have not been over to Bar Harbor yet to see. I'm going over tomorrow. None of the restaurants are actually giving dine-in service. They have takeout. I think 1, 2, 3. I've seen 4 restaurants that are doing takeout in this area. And most of the restaurants are still closed for the season. What about lodging? Hotels are permitted now to take reservations for June 1st from Maine residents and people from outside Maine who have gone through a 14-day quarantine period in Maine. And that is the big factor that's going to impact us this summer. The state of Maine has issued a quarantine of 14 days for anyone except an essential worker coming into the state from out of state. So if you come in on your boat and sail into Southwest Harbor from, say, New York, when you get here, you're going to have to stay aboard your boat for 14 days before you can go ashore. If you drive into the state, same thing. You're going to have to stay someplace. However, until July 1st, hotels can't rent you a room until you finished your quarantine period. So basically what it boils down to is, at this time, the only people who can come into the state from outside the state and quarantine are people who own a summer home here, or perhaps a camp up in the woods, or maybe a lot someplace that they park their RV on. If you don't have your own place to stay right now, well, you can't come into the state and quarantine because you can't stay anywhere during your quarantine period. Now, on July 1st, I'm not sure exactly what happens. The quarantine period will still be in effect, but I think hoteliers will be permitted to rent you a room, but you, of course, would then have to stay in that room for 14 days and have everything delivered to you, which would not be much of a vacation in my view. So the quarantine is currently scheduled to end at the end of August. So basically it's the entire summer. Now, of course, it could change at any time if the COVID-19 epidemic drops off in intensity and we stop having very many cases. Unfortunately, for the last week, we've been having record numbers of new cases every day, and it doesn't look good for ending the quarantine soon. So that's going to be a big impact. Basically, if you're coming up here for a 2-week vacation, well, your 2-week vacation is going to be spent in quarantine someplace, except that at least until July, you can't stay anyplace unless you own your own property. So that is a big issue. And that's going to impact the area, because here on Mount Desert Island, where Acadia National Park is located, tourism is a big deal. There are a lot of businesses here that exist solely for the tourist trade. And if the tourists can't come this year, it's going to impact them tremendously. It's not going to affect employment on the island for the local population that much, because not that many local people work in the tourist trade. There are a few that work in the summer, but a lot, maybe even the majority of the people who work in the tourist trade come from off Mount Desert Island, indeed from out of state, and many of them even come from outside the United States. We get a lot of South American, Caribbean, and European workers here in the summer. Most of them are students who come here, work for the summer, and then go back to school. So there's usually a pretty international population of workers here in the tourist industry. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is this looks like it's going to be the quietest summer in a long time here on Mount Desert Island. And that's going to really change boating here, because there aren't going to be many boats out there on the water. In fact, right now there are only about 4 pleasure boats here in the marina. Now, more are supposed to show up over the next couple of weeks, but as far as I know, the marina doesn't have any transient bookings for the summer at this time, because people don't know if they will be permitted to come. And if we look at the harbor, there are very few moorings rigged. My mooring is rigged. Matter of fact, I tied up to it last Wednesday on my way over here after the boat was launched to rig up for coming into the slip. But none of the moorings within about 200 yards of my mooring were rigged. Usually that would be more than a dozen moorings. None of them are rigged. So I don't think I'm going to have too many neighbors on the mooring this year, which will be good and bad. It will be good because it will be very peaceful out there, nobody around, very quiet, and if we want to spend the night on the boat, on the mooring, it'll be a very pleasant and peaceful night. On the other hand, as the only sailboat in a pretty large area out there, my boat is going to be a target for cormorants, and I anticipate having to do a lot of scrubbing to keep the boat even remotely clean. And that is really bad. So anyway, that's what's up here right now on May 25th, 2020 in Southwest Harbor, Maine on Mount Desert Island. And so that's that. Hope you found this informative. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't, please subscribe to my channel. And you can look forward to some boating videos pretty soon as the season gets going, at least for me, here on Mount Desert Island. Thanks for watching.